Welcome in, everybody. Welcome to 2021. Yay, we made it. A little bit of a clap. We survived 2020. I'm your host, Diane McClay with the Diane McClay Show. Today, we are going to invite you into the new year with what does it look like to sound and play small? How can you use your intuition to help break that perfectionist cycle, and why saying yes to yourself is important and critical, especially as we move into this brand new year. My guest today is Tara Stricker, who is a soul alignment coach, energy healer, one of my great friends, and she has some unique talents where she uses flower essences, listening to your intuition, and tuning into the wisdom of the body to help you build the life you want. Tara, welcome in, my friend. Happy 2021.
Happy 2021. Thanks for having me.
Can you believe we made it?
Yep. Lots of challenges, but yep, I think it was good in
Right.
so many ways.
Since we're talking about the new year, would you mind sharing with the audience, when we were talking off air, you told me that you were going for a walk on New Year's Day and you kind of felt this giddiness. Could you go into that story real quickly, and then what the aha was for you in that moment?
Yeah, and it was actually New Year's Eve. I was feeling like this giddiness, excitement, and I was like, well, that's kind of different. And I was like, okay. And I just, like I do with all my emotions, I just kind of let it be and saw where it came from. But then when I woke up, there was like this wave of anger. And I was like, where is that coming from? Because I was giddy and happy and excited, and then this wave of anger. And on my walk, I realized that that was me feeling afraid of hope, I guess is the best way to describe it. And I think a lot of people were scared to be hopeful. And so it was my defense mechanism going, oh, nope, too hopeful. Whoa, got to go to anger. Got to give you something that I know. So yeah, it was really interesting and a really kind of eye opener to me that I needed to invite more hope into my life and be okay with it and sit with it and actually enjoy it.
Right. And one of the things that I hear in that right away is that you tuned into your emotions, like you noticed them, you recognized them, you gave them some space, and then you got curious about them. Can you
Mhm.
elaborate a little bit on why that is a critical step to not playing small?
I think it's a huge step in our personal development and our soul growth to tune into our emotions, because our emotions are there for a reason. Um, and they're meant to flow like water. They're not meant to lock us in. And so by being aware of them and how they feel in your body, you can kind of tune in and go, yep, that's where that's coming from. And then you can like just allow it. Whereas if we don't know what's kind of coming up for us, we may feel stress in the body. We may feel kind of tight or frustrated. Yeah, like stress, I guess, in our body. And if we don't know and we haven't tuned into our emotions, then we almost get more stressed because we're like, what is this? What is happening? Am I having a heart attack? And so, but the more you know, and the more you know how the emotions show up in your body, the more you can go back to how they're supposed to be, how they're just supposed to flow. And so, allowing them to flow gives you that space. And then you can always get curious because there's a reason that they're coming up. So,
And when you say how they're supposed to be, let's clarify that for our audience. You don't really mean how everybody else tells us how they
no.
are supposed to be, right?
Right. What I mean by that is if you look at they allow their emotions to flow. 1 minute they're happy, 1 minute they're angry, 1 minute they're sad, then they're happy. And that's how emotions are meant to be. They're not meant to, like I said, we're not meant to be locked into it. We're not supposed to be angry all day because we got cut off. We're supposed to be like, oh, and then, oh, look, sun, and that's how we're supposed to be. And they're supposed to flow. And that's the healthiest for us when they do flow.
And what would be something that would be an identifier for our audience if for us to recognize that flow is not happening? How does that show up, either energetically in the body or maybe even environmentally around us?
I think when it's not flowing for me, I am tuned into my body after much training. Um, and I know what it feels like, and I know what it feels like when it doesn't feel good. And so that's a cue for me when my body, because our bodies don't lie. Our bodies are completely honest. It's our mind that tells us the stories. And so when I feel my body kind of, tense up or Yeah, I guess tense is the most, or I feel kind of hot sometimes, then I'm like, okay, what's this? And I get curious, like you said. And I love that. Getting curious is so much better than what's wrong with me? Because that's just a totally different energy than, hmm, what's that? And it brings on a lot more insights, I think, when you're not like in that space of what's wrong with me? I need to fix myself.
Right. And that's a message that we get told a lot by our families, our workplaces, our societies, that there is something wrong with us. We're
Hmm.
not fitting into a mold. We're not meeting someone else's expectations. So, why is it really critical now, especially as we're moving out of the heavy earth energy from 2020? And astrologists are telling us that we're moving into an Aquarius sign, into a sense of airiness that's going to be around for 20 years. Why is it critical to recognize the expectations other people have for us, and then give ourselves permission to step away from them?
Um, so sorry, the expectations that others have of us. I think that we take those on. Like we take on our cultural beliefs, we take on the beliefs of our family, we take on beliefs of our friends and family on how we should be. And then we, like you said, try to fit into this mold that we're not because we're not being true to ourselves. And so it brings up a lot of stress for us because there's this I need to do this and I have to do this because this is what society says, or this is what yeah, society or our family or expectations say about us. But our true self is like, "No, I don't want to do that." And so there's this constant kind of battle, I think, for a lot of people where it's like, I have to, but I don't want to. And so I think, I think the important thing and moving into 2021, I think is a great intention for 2021 is listen more to what you want to do rather than what you have to do and
I
should
think
do.
that I want you to say that again. Listen more to what you want to do as opposed to what you have to do. I know for me that, and you know my story, and we've mentioned this once or twice on the show before, but there was a point in my dream career where what I wanted was to be more creative and have more autonomy and have less rigidity, less sense of formalized institutional authority.
Hmm.
I want to play, and I want to live my life in a happy way, and I want to work in a way that feeds myself and feeds other people around me. So the word over my right shoulder is choice, and the one over my left is courage. And I think that that's my foundation that I'm bringing into 2021, is that we actually get to choose a lot of our path. We don't get to choose what happens to us, but we certainly have the ability to choose how we react, how we learn,
Hmm.
how we grow, and we definitely get to choose how it defines us if we want it to. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. And I mean, we don't get to define what happens in society, but how we receive that and how we process it is completely our choice. And we have so much power in that. Um, we don't have to play the victim. We don't have to play, we don't have to get angry. We can get curious, like you said, take triggers as a invitation for healing, um, and grow from it. It doesn't have to be, and again, there's that have to word, which again, I just living a life of have tos is not good and not healthy and doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right.
And I would follow that up with, when it doesn't feel right. One of the things, as I started to learn about curiosity and the energy that my body holds, the coaches and healers that I've had in my life have encouraged me to, if I can't identify what's going on, at least start with identify where is it showing up.
Hmm.
So, like before we got on the show, right in my diaphragm, I have all sorts of like firecracker type energy, and that's because I'm passionate about what you and I are doing. I'm passionate about these messages we're sharing with our audience, and I'm excited that I'm living my truth, and I'm excited that I'm living my purpose.
Hmm.
So, what are some things that you help your clients do to help recognize either what's showing up or how is it showing up?
I think probably, well, I do soul alignment. So I do that with, like you said, energy healing. And a lot of times the flower essences, when we're kind of like, I don't know what's going on, I just don't feel right, can give some really good in-depth understanding for us. Um, but other than that, I teach clients how to tune back into their wisdom because a lot of us have lost our wisdom amongst all those have to, shoulds, and all that other mind chatter, bad girl, good girl, all that stuff that goes on in our heads constantly. And so by being able to tune into your wisdom and not even just tuning in, but being able to feel what that feels like when you follow that wisdom and you follow that guidance compared to when you're doing one of those have to do's. it feels completely different in our bodies. And again, coming back to the emotions that you were talking about, that's what brings up that anger and that frustration and all that other stuff, is because we're not being true to ourselves. And most of us don't even know that.
Right. So give an example of what honoring yourself or being true to yourself looks or feels like for you, or perhaps for a client you've worked with without obviously naming their name.
um, for me, like I said, I can feel it in my body. And the minute I'm feeling clenched in any area of my body, whether it be internal or, external, so my hands get clenched or things like that, or my body feels tight, I know that that's not good for me. Um, but my one of my clients had the best way, and I mean, she said I can't really describe it, but she got the feeling herself, and this is kind of what I do, is when it's a choice that aligns with her, it feels like a clear road, like she's cruising. And when it's not, then it feels crumpled. And you can see when people talk about
Hmm.
it, they're like, oh, and there's just kind of this heaviness. And yeah, so it's just tuning into what that feels like. And then that was part of our session, was to, is this a choice that makes you feel a clear road, or is this a choice that makes you crumple? And I mean, that it can be as simple as that until you get to really tune in, and then you don't even need to ask yourself, I'm like, oh, crumple, that's a crumple feeling, like
Right.
I don't want to do that.
So crumple, condensing
Hmm.
versus expansion. I know I do a lot of yoga, and I know you do too.
Hmm.
I absolutely love standing in mountain pose,
Me too.
because there's this point, right? I mean, there's this point where like you get a chance to pull the shoulders back and broaden the chest and expose the heart to the world. And then there's this position of your hands being at your side where you're just literally receiving, and
Hmm.
all you're doing is anchoring. When
Yep.
I'm in that pose, I feel very expansive. I feel like I can conquer the world. I feel like
Hmm.
nothing is impossible for me. I'm not afraid of anything. And I don't worry about what it is that I look like.
Hmm.
And then I compare that to some days when I wake up in the morning and I kind of shuffle to the coffee machine, or I worry about a decision I have to make. And whenever I start to feel stressed or condensed in my body, I literally just take a couple of seconds and just open back up to mountain pose and take
Hmm.
a breath. And that's one thing I want to encourage our audience to do right now, and even our producer if he's in the background, is just recognize, like, take a breath, like just stop for a minute and recognize what is happening in your body right
Hmm.
now, right?
Absolutely.
Um, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love mountain pose too, and it is such a powerful pose. It's no kidding that no wonder it's called mountain pose. But to the breath too, that is such a way to just kind of, if you're feeling it, it gives you that space to kind of figure out what's going on from a non-judgmental place. So just a deep breath and coming back to the breath and bringing in life force, just as like a reset, and then going, okay, what was that? Curious,
Right,
what was
right.
that?
So let's talk about like playing small. We kind of teased this out with how to stop playing small. So what would be a couple of tips that you have for people to recognize that they are playing small, and then how to stop that? We talked about perfectionism before the show. Maybe that's a
Mhm.
piece of it.
So playing small is, I think, kind of exactly what we're talking about. Playing small to me is when we don't follow our guidance, when we do everything that we need to do, we have to do, that crumpled, that ugh, heavy feeling. Anything that you go, ugh, when you have to do it or you think about it, that's not aligned with you. That is something that you have been programmed and accepted that program, that's something that's a good thing to do. Um, and so I think when we play small, and I don't think it's done consciously at all, but it's just following all those programs and following all that. This is what I have to do, this is what I need to do. And I think perfectionism, tying that into that, perfectionism is that, it's that core need of being accepted. And so we become perfectionists to, so that we can't get judged. And so we think if we do it perfect, then it'll be all good. But if it's one of those things that you are having to do or need to do, or you're forcing yourself to do, it's never going to be perfect. And there really is never a perfect either. So,
Right. One thing I do, and I have a tendency, I have a perfectionist streak show up in my world. And one thing I have started to try to do to change that is whatever I'm doing with my dominant hand, which is my right hand, I will then, once I realize, oh, the perfectionist is showing up, I'll actually try to do the exact same thing with my left hand. And
mm,
because what happens is obviously I'm not going to be nearly as good, right? Obviously it's not going to be perfect.
Hmm.
Obviously it's not going to be as good as my dominant hand. But there is this sense of it's okay because I'm not trying to be perfect.
Hmm.
It's a strange thing to say, but try just writing. If I'm trying to write a letter and trying to get all the words right, if it's not flowing, then I'll
Yeah.
just try to write a sentence or two with my left hand, and it causes me to be more deliberate, more focused, but I also have to let go of, oh, that letter doesn't look right. You know what I mean?
Yep. And I would say it kind of breaks that pattern of perfectionism too, because you're physically doing something different. So you're disrupting that pattern. For me, I've just learned to laugh at my mistakes and just go, yeah, perfectly imperfect. That's me, and I'm okay with that. I am perfectly imperfect and I am good with that. And every time I feel it come up, I know that that is a core need for acceptance. So I send myself some love and I send my inner child some love and I go, we're okay. We're good. We're safe. And I kind of have like a pep talk with myself because that for me is what is at the core of perfectionism, is that need to be accepted and not wanting to be rejected.
I agree. I think playing small too is, when we look at something in hindsight, there's a lot of times that we say, "Oh man, I wish I did," or "I should have done that." Meaning, not that that's what society is telling us, but we recognize after the fact that there was something different that we wished we would have done. Which, if you go back into that thought process, you usually get a hit on your intuition. You
Hmm.
usually feel something in your gut, and I think part of not playing small is recognizing when you're at that crossroads of, oh, I feel like I want to do this, or I feel like I should do this, and like for yourself, not for someone else,
Yep.
and then you bypass it, right?
Hmm.
You're like, that means nothing. And I think playing big means giving yourself that permission to listen to that and then change your course of direction based on that.
Hmm.
Would you agree?
I would agree. And I think looking at your word back there, it takes a lot of courage because sometimes our intuition tells us some things and we're like, "No, I can't do that." Like, are you kidding me? Um, but it knows and it knows what's best for us. And so, again, with that getting curious, if your intuition is saying that you should go be a singer rather than, "Pff, I can't sing," like, and blowing that off right away, it's get curious about how could this work and what would that be like and just play with it a bit. And that's, I think, like you said, a lot of people get the hits from their intuition, but then fear sets in, or that perfectionism mind, or that I need to figure this out, I need to know exactly, I need to know step by step how to get there. And instead of just allowing and being with it, and letting the steps kind of reveal themselves. And I think a lot of times, like I said, I think it's fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of something new, fear of the unknown, because a lot of times our intuition might, like I say, might be something, we might get a hit on something that's big and we don't understand how we're going to get there, and then we're like, nope, I don't know how to get there, so we just kind of withdraw.
And working with coaches, and we've got about 9 minutes left. I want to touch on your flower essences, but
Okay.
working with coaches and somebody who can come into the conversation with non-judgment is a really good way to help break that cycle. Even if it's one session or it's a committed year-long session. But you and I both have our own coaches. We work with other healers to help us see
Mhm.
into our blind spots or into the corners of our world. So I really encourage our listeners that one of the things that you should commit to is really get somebody on your team who can help you see into those corners. You mentioned flower essences, and one of the things we like to do on this show is we just like to remind people that one of the ways to connect to yourself is connecting to nature. So, David, if you can roll some of those photos for me, that would be great. Um, you submitted some pictures. You're a photographer in the
Yeah.
background, and you submitted some pictures of some flowers. So can you talk to a little bit about what connects you to nature, and why did you send me these pictures of the bleeding heart, the sunflower, and the daisies and the calla lily?
Okay. So that was like a whole lot of questions in one.
Well, okay, so let's talk about why you talk about your flower essences and why you feel that is the thing that connects you to nature and what you get out of it.
Okay. So first of all, I think nature is a natural healer of our soul. When you're out in nature, you just can't help but ground. So even if you're in your head, just by being out in nature, by being in forests, by being around trees, in parks, you naturally ground. And you naturally get that energy. And the flower essences, just bring that in. So it's energy healing with the Bach flower essences that I do. And so the four pictures, there wasn't any specific reason why I chose those ones, but um, the bleeding hearts, what that essence brings is the vibration of, I can't even remember them now. I wrote them.
Unconditional love. I got it right here
Thank
for
you.
you.
Thank you. Because
Unconditional
there's
love and an
about,
open heart.
yeah. So, which is, I think, a great thing to start the new year with. Bleeding heart is something that I used a lot when my husband passed. And it's pouring ourselves too much into others. And again, that kind of coming back to yourself. So, bleeding heart helps us with that. Um, and unconditionally loving ourselves as well.
And also emotional freedom, I think you mentioned. It helps
Yes.
bring that into our life. So
Which
the
we
next
were
one is
talking about earlier.
sunflower, which is one of my favorites. And you talked about it expressing unique individuality and allowing our ego and our personality to be infused with a radiant sunlight type thing, right?
So the sunflower essence, like you said, brings all that in. And for me, when I've brought it in for myself, I feel it just in my solar plexus, and I feel like just the sun. And so whenever I see a sunflower, I just get this like spark of almost like mountain pose, like we were talking about, like
Right.
this sun radiant, spiritualized ego. Yeah, power, sense of
Sun,
power.
sunflowers and daisies are two flowers that for me that I don't know that anybody can be grumpy when they see them. Right. I just don't think it's possible to experience grumpiness. So the Shasta daisy you shared with me is holistic consciousness and enabling us to synthesize different or dissimilar thoughts and creating a sense of wholeness, right?
Right. So yeah, the Shasta Daisy helps us to kind of bring all these parts in. So kind of like we were talking about with like our beliefs and things like that, and being able to see kind of the whole picture. So rather than being scattered into I am a mom and so I do this, I am a sister so I do this, it helps us have that whole kind of perspective of who we are, and again coming back to ourselves. So
And we mentioned balance earlier on, which brings us to the calla lily, which you shared with me, integrates the masculine and the feminine energy. Hi, Bramble. And then personal sexual acceptance, right?
yes. So calla lily really helps us to balance those masculine and feminine energies. And I think that might be a really good one for 2021. I've been feeling the shift, and I think a lot of people have over the last couple of years, that we're moving more out of masculine and more into feminine. But we definitely need both. And even within ourselves, we have people who strongly identify with feminine, and then we have others who strongly identify with masculine, but they need to play together. Even with like within ourselves, they need to play together. We need both. We can't just have, just feminine energy or just masculine energy. So
And, Tara, we never, ever have enough time to really dig into all these topics as much as we want. We have 2 minutes left. So can you do a quick, tell the listeners one last thing that's important that they need to know in 2021? Let's tell them how they can get a hold of you. And then I need to tell them a little bit about my show towards the end.
okay.
Two,
That did go fast.
I know, right?
So I think for 2021, I think if everyone sets the intention to tune into themselves, to really trust their guidance, become their own authority, because that I think is really, really important, especially with everything going on, that we know what's true for us. And by knowing that, we can make better decisions and we can be happier. So that would be kind of my, and I, like you said, I'm a soul alignment coach. So I help people learn to tune into that wisdom, to help them to kind of sort through all the mind chatter so that they can hear what their true wisdom is and know what that's like, so that they can make those decisions based on them.
Right. And real quick, your website where people can find more information about you.
www.tswlifecoaching.com.
Got it. And we're coming to the end of our show. I'm Diane McClay, where we're here to help you empower life through choice. Thank you for tuning in to us 2021. You can find me every other Friday, second and fourth Friday of the month at 1:30 Pacific time, 4:30 Eastern. More information about me at dianemcclay.com. And as always, I just want everybody to know I see you and I believe in you. Have a good new year.